Intro noises! I am Rose Knight, and I have been gone for a while. And I have a good reason for that. The truth is, I'm on the run from the law, and I have been for over a year. And it's not just because of the war crimes I committed while finishing the journal on Hollow Knight. No, it is far, far worse. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. You see, it all started like most things do, in the middle of a different story. I had just gotten back from my honeymoon, and it was finally time for me and my beautiful, wonderful spouse to move from New Hampshire to Tennessee. We packed up all my stuff into a moving truck and went on our merry way across the country. Unfortunately, at this point, we had already made a terrible, terrible mistake. For you see, we didn't pack everything. In fact, we forgot a grand total of one thing. The one thing we definitely could not forget, no matter what. The one thing that would lead me down a path of destruction. For it was told in a grand old prophecy, as time would pass, it would eventually come to be that I would need to renew the dreaded registration on my car. It was my destiny. Dun dun dun! Lightning noises. Now, it wasn't my first rodeo. I've registered my car many times before, because legally I have to every year. But what I didn't account for was the different car laws from one state to another. New Hampshire requires you to get an inspection to make sure your car is fully functional before you're allowed to drive it on the street legally. And for good reason. If you break down in New Hampshire during the wrong time of year, you're likely to just outright freeze to death. So my expectation was that I would need to jump through a bunch of hoops to get this done. However, my wife assured me that we'd be able to just walk in and walk out of the DMV without much hassle. Oh, how naive we were back then. As it turns out, in the state of Tennessee, the first time you register your car, you need to prove that you own it by presenting the DMV with a title. That makes sense, I thought on my drive back home. So I walk into my tiny apartment, and I pull out a bin of important documents from underneath my bed. It's filled with old bills I needed to prove my residency, military documents, school accomplishments, but no car title. I look through all the documents again, still no title. I ask my wife if she knew where it could have gone, and we look around the small apartment to no avail. I check my car, my in-laws' house. I called my parents back in New Hampshire just to see if they knew where it was, and it never turned up. So, at this point, I've exhausted every option I have. The only choice I have left now is to order a new one. And no pressure, right? I still have a month before my registration was up. That was a year ago. And spoiler, I still don't have my title. So, the first thing I do is call my DMV back in New Hampshire to ask them what I need to do to get a new title. And they were very helpful. They said it may take up to a week for me to get my title, but all I needed to do was print out a form for a replacement title and fill it out and send it to them with a check for a certain amount. So I do that, and I went on with my life. A few days go by, a week, then 2 weeks. I was starting to get nervous, so I tried calling them again, but at this point I was working at an office job with regular hours, Monday through Friday, which made it insanely difficult to try and call the DMV, since the only time I could call them while they were open was during my lunch break. And during that time, the call line was always so busy that I couldn't get a hold of them. So I tried to do that for a couple weeks, until eventually I have no choice but ask my anxious spouse to help me on one of their days off. She agrees, and eventually she gets a hold of them. And let me just say, this blew my mind when I first heard it. The New Hampshire DMV told her that they got the title request, but ignored it. Why? Because we also needed a change of address form, apparently. Since the address we told them to send it to didn't match the one they had on file, despite the fact that the form I filled out already had personal info that only I could know, and they just weren't going to tell us until we called them again. So we print out another title replacement form, a change of address form, we fill both of them out, and I send them over with another check. More time passes. I call them again, and I ask, why don't I have my title yet? They ask me a few personal questions until they can find me in their system, and you will not believe what they said to me. They said, "Oh yeah, we have your title. Would you like us to send it over?" And I responded with, Yes, please. Yes, thank you. Oh my god. I would love for you to send my title over.
Oh, sure. Is there anything else we can do for you?
And at this point, I think to myself, I should just make sure they have the correct address because of the address change form. I should make sure that's all in order, and I do, and they have my current accurate address. And I say, perfect, thank you, and we leave it there. More time passes. And keep in mind that at this point, I need my car to drop off my wife for work, to drive myself to work, buy groceries, general stuff, you know, to live my life. So I've been driving my unregistered car around for several months now, just hoping I wouldn't get pulled over. A week goes by, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. I call again.
Hello, how can we help you?
Yes, hello, where is my title?
Oh, we don't know. We sent it, but didn't get it back, so yeah, you should talk to your post office.
So I go talk to my post office, and they say they don't hold any mail. They just send it out. So I go talk to my apartment office, and they say the same thing. They don't hold any mail. They just send it to where it's supposed to be. So at this point, I'm just out of options. Well, except for one. But before I get into that, I just want to spend a moment talking about this video's small creator shoutout! For the uninitiated, I do a shoutout of one chosen small creator every edited video. As a small creator myself, I understand how hard it is to find your audience, so I want to do whatever I can to help wherever I can. And for this video, I'd like to shout out Faye Drozera, or Drozera, Faye Drozera. I don't know how to pronounce it. They are a VTuber here on YouTube that really likes obscure, slightly morbid science. Honestly, it is unbelievable that they only have 250 subscribers. I mean, don't take my word for it, just watch this.
I am so pleased and excited to introduce to you a new level of Lovecraftian horror, evil proteins. Like proteins that will turn your brain into soup. Does the name mad cow disease ring any bells? Or cowbells? Ever hear any stories of zombie-like deer? Let's dive in, but bring a 20-foot pole with you because this is a problem you do not want to experience. So what in tarnation is a prion, you ask? Prions are as simple and horrible as previously stated. They are proteins that misfold other proteins in your brain. Some of the sources I read state that there are normal proteins in the brain called prions, whereas the murderous edition of these proteins are called prion disease. For simplicity's sake, when I refer to prions in this video, I'm referring to the prions that create disease and destruction in your brain. Just like watching VTubing content.
Okay, so if you like what you saw as much as I did, then you need to go over to their channel and leave them likes and comments just to help them out with the algorithm. Tell them that Rose Knight sent you. You'll find a link to their channel in the description below. And hey, if you have someone you want me to shout out, go leave it in the Discord. I'll check them out, and if I like what I see, I'll shout them out in a future video. With all that being said, back to the story. So because I was left with no alternative option, I got on a plane and flew back to New Hampshire, so I could try to get them to hand me my title in person. While I was there, I had a very nice visit with my family, which was great, but this was an unexpected trip, and as I said before, I still don't have my title. So here's what happened. So I showed up at the DMV that I've been calling, right? And I wait in line so I can get a form to fill out so that they know why I'm there, so that they can give me a number for them to call on. They call my number, and they tell me that they don't even handle the titles at their location, directly at least. And that I would need to go to a completely different DMV, their main office over an hour away, in order to get my title. I say thank you for the information and drive to the next DMV. I wait in line so I can get a form to fill out, so I can get a number for them to call on. And eventually they call my number again. And I explain to them that I would just like a replacement title for my car. And they say, sure, we can do that. We can send it over to you right away. And I say, no, could you actually just hand it to me over the counter? And at this point, I explain everything that I've been through so far. And the nice service lady, as I'm explaining my story, looks at me with horror in her eyes. Her face goes pale. She says that she had just looked up my previous attempts to receive my title, and for a moment, I thought they hadn't even been sending it. But it was far worse. The truth is, they sent it 3 times, all to the correct address, but it got sent back to them each and every time, which meant that they had to shred my title and would need to reprint it since it had already been 3 times. And not only did they have no idea why this was happening, they also couldn't even hand me my title even if they did reprint it. Because as it turns out, in New Hampshire, the law states you cannot hand someone over their title over the counter. The DMV has to send it to the address they have on file. So I came all this way for nothing. And to the nice service lady's credit, she asked all of her coworkers if there was anything else they could do to help me. But at the end, I had to leave the DMV empty-handed. No, I thought to myself, I wasn't done yet. I had one more idea. An idea so crazy, it just might work. I drove down the road to the local post office and bought a priority envelope with a tracking number attached. I filled out the to and from address for the envelope, making sure that both were my apartment address. That way, even if the title gets returned, it will be returned to my address, to my mailbox. I went back into the DMV. I filled out another form, I got another number, I waited to be called again. When I got to the counter, I saw the same face of the nice service lady that was helping me before. I handed her the envelope as well as another check and explained my plan to her. I asked if it would be possible for them to send it one more time, but this time use the envelope I gave them, and they said yes, absolutely. I walked out of the DMV triumphantly, while everyone applauded. But in all seriousness, a few days have passed since that day, and I am happy to report that I am able to track my package. My plan is to wait by my mailbox as the package arrives so I can get it and figure out why my title was never delivered in the first place. Hopefully I'll be able to drive legally again soon, and I'll post updates in the Discord as to what happens next. But in the meantime, I'm gonna be able to start streaming again soon, so expect a full cheese playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3. I have over 600 hours in the game now, and let's just say, the game is so cheesable. The cheese is strong with this one. It's gonna be a genocide run. Not sure how it's gonna go, but there's only one way to find out. So, subscribe. Speaking of, this little build I did was actually the Nautiloid ship from the tutorial of Baldur's Gate 3. If you just want to see the build without any voiceover or images or anything like that, I'll leave that posted in the Discord, and I might post that on the main channel later. We'll just wait and see. And on another note, I wasn't able to post in the last few weeks because of personal stuff, including, but not limited to, the title. But while all that was happening, I wasn't just sitting around doing nothing. For a while, I was working on a PNG tuber model I made, and somewhere along the line, I thought it would be way cooler to teach myself how to rig a VTuber model. So I did that. Using the same exact pixel art character, I made this. So look forward to seeing this, as well as general upgrades to the stream while I was on this little hiatus. With all that being said, until next time, outro noises!